This is Kevin, Bridget, and Angelique Bash.
Only Kevin's
but actually, he says only Kevin is here. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Tell me something about your book here.
Well, I've got three of them here. I've actually got Norco, which is the story of Norco. I've got the Norconian Resort, which was built in Norco, and I have the Navy in Norco, which is about the Naval Hospital and Naval Weapons Lab that was built on the Norconian site.
Okay, I also noticed you have some of the Huell Hauser.
Yeah, I appeared with him talking about the Norconian and the Naval Hospital, 2008, 2009.
You guys, this one really draws my attention because in the early 60s, my dad moved us to Norco when there were a lot of houses being built. So this looks really interesting to me. And then my grandfather settled right here in Corona in around 1910. What made you decide to write about Norco?
Well, actually, I wrote about the Norconian first because nobody knew it was there. It was in the middle of a prison. And then I wrote about the Navy in Norco because nobody knew of the Navy presence in Norco. One of the great naval hospitals. And then I wrote about Norco because nobody had ever told the story. In fact, in 1910, it wasn't known as Norco. It was known as Citrus Belt.
Is that the Navy lab that's behind that hill?
In 1941, December 8, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor, it was designated U.S. Naval Hospital No. 1. And it soon became the largest naval hospital in the chain. And then it closed temporarily in 49, reopened in Korea, but in the meantime they also moved the Navy's missile program there in 1951. So they split the property, with the south end being the missile lab and the north end being the Navy hospital. But this Navy hospital at one point was the largest hospital in the entire United States.
Wow, I had no idea.
Wheelchair basketball was born there, the first uses of penicillin for tuberculosis. This was the premier hospital, and part of the reason I wrote this is the last, still intact, almost completely intact, U.S. naval hospital in the United States from World War II.
And now tell me about the Norconian Resort. I never even heard of that.
Well, in 1923, May 13th, we became Norco, and the man that founded Norco was a guy named Rex Clark. And in 1925, he was digging a well on his property, and he discovered hot springs. And the nice thing about this hot springs is it's called sweet sulfur water, which meant it had a very high mineral content, but it had no sulfur smell. He decided to build the greatest resort on the West Coast that had ever been built, and he did it in 2 years. February 2nd, 1929, he opened the Norconian Resort.
Now, who came there? Did celebrities come there, presidents?
You named a star, and they were there.
Okay.
On opening day, you had Charlie Chaplin, you had Buster Keaton.
Interesting.
And lots of films were shot there too.
Oh, okay.
But what's interesting is when it became a naval hospital, the resort really hit the Depression, and it was hit hard. It closed in 33, reopened in 35. But then when the war was about to break out, the United States government was looking at these big resorts because nobody had the money to go to them, and they thought the war was going to start. And they purchased them for hospitals. And the stars that had gone to the Norconian actually began to entertain the troops at the Naval Hospital.
Oh, okay.
And so everybody from Bob Hope to Elvis Presley to Abbott and Costello to Cary Grant. In fact, it was the largest hospital in the chain. There were as many as 5,000 to 6,000 patients. You had a staff of 2,500. And what's pretty interesting is you had about 1,000 people living in Norco at the time.
I went to actually Riverview Elementary when it opened.
So did I.
Were you really?
I went the day it opened.
Me too. I was a student there.
How old are you?
I'm 55. I'll be 56.
So you were in 4th grade. I was in 6th. So you're an old Norconian.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Springfield, Ohio, September 1912. Young Jack Neely hung for a moment, belly on the sill, before he let go and dropped to the litter-strewn yard. Raising the frayed collar on his coat against the pre-dawn chill, he crept along the side of the shanty and paused at the corner to listen beneath his father's bedroom window. Deep snores told him that the man he called Big Jim, same as everyone else, was sleeping off another real snootful. Probably wouldn't stir till noon, not till the aviation show was over. Of course, Jack knew he'd catch holy hell later for any number of reasons. If this was Friday, Big Jim would strap him bloody for playing hooky. Not that his father put much store in schooling past 6th grade, but he didn't like county people nosing around the place. If it was Sunday, he'd stripe him because he'd ditched Mass. But this was Saturday, so most likely Big Jim would be sore that Jack wasn't there to hightail it down to O'Donnell's for a pint jar or to wash up the week's worth of dishes stacked in the kitchen sink. Or he might lay into him for no reason at all, except he was hungover and Jack looked at him sideways.
So this is Faith Brashear, and her book is called Defrauded Nations, The Mortgage Crisis Exposed. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, the book actually will explain to a consumer exactly what happened in the mortgage crisis, the crash, the lenders, what they actually did in the 1999 when they deregulated everything and put into play these loans, which everybody is familiar with. Those were the loans that you go, mirror, fog, sign here.
Right, yes.
And those were the loans that they actually paid the brokers to go in and give them money to flip a little switch within the margins without disclosing to the homeowners what they were doing. Now that's a securities and exchange violation because they were using these loans to go directly into securitization, bypassing the secondary market. So when they did that, they placed these into trust, which were offered out to investors under a rigged LIBOR. And what my book will do is it brings it down to our level, the layman level, essentially, and explain to it in terms that people can actually understand. It also has in here ways to clear and protect your credit. It has ways in here to explain, okay, if I'm in a foreclosure situation, what do I do? How do I pay? I'm also a NACA advocate. I'm NACA, N-A-C-A. It's the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. I am a NACA approved broker and a home safe advocate. I've been on the front lines fighting this for over 5 years. I was a witness with the FBI and the IRS when a lot of this fraud came down in the Inland Empire because, you know, there were a lot of bad boys and girls out there doing stuff.
And was that during the recession when everyone started losing their homes?
That was, yes. Well, my inspiration to write this book happened right after Bank of America sold off a ton of loans to NationStar. And NationStar foreclosed on loans that were modified in good standing under Bank of America without any recourse to these buyers who thought that they were protected. Now, this is one of the ones where I absolutely, loved because the NACA went out and actually did a peaceful protest that went blocks around for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to file a protest, and it actually helped contract them with NationStar so they could no longer foreclose on people who were losing their homes that were modified, that they were threatening. I wrote it because I got tired of the person being taken advantage of. But what really took over the board for me is in December of 2012 when they actually announced that they had rigged and made arrest for rigging the LIBOR index, and that is the index, it's a major benchmark index. And when you research how these loans were used and how they were securitized and put on the market, they were offering these predatory loans triggering defaults within 3 years, past the statute of limitations in a court of law, to sell these loans in a pool of trust that they never backed to investors on a rigged LIBOR index to control the payout to their investors. So this is an elaborate racketeering scheme that absolutely utilized me and turned me into a criminal on their behalf. I'm sharing it with the American public because they need to be aware of how they were used in a racketeering scheme.
Okay, and so you want them basically to know what happened and why this happened and why they lost their homes?
Yes, and how to protect themselves in the future.
And how to protect themselves in the future so this doesn't happen to them again. So history does not repeat itself. So you're like an Aaron Brockovich. That's what you remind me of. Really, you're for the people, right?
I am very much for the people.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot. Okay, you guys, so this is Faith Brashear, and her book is Defrauded Nations, The Mortgage Crisis Exposed. Very good. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.